November of 1992, Bram Stoker's Dracula hit theaters all over the country. That was literally 30 years ago. So what I want to do is go back and discuss a great film, one of my favorite adaptations from a book ever, and that is Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula. Coppola, of course, known most famously as the director of The Godfather 1, 2, and 3, and he also directed Apocalypse Now, among other films. I would say that Bram Stoker's Dracula was his first sort of foray into this kind of material, but the movie is a great mix of a lot of different genres in a great way. This movie, I mean, look, I, the other day, was trying to find the film in my collection because I've got it on like DVD and I've got it on Blu-ray, and I couldn't find the Blu-ray. So I check on Amazon, and what I mean by I couldn't find it was literally it was in my house and I couldn't find it. Like, I'm looking everywhere. I don't know if somebody stole it or if I dropped it somewhere, or maybe I never had it. Maybe I Mandela affected myself into thinking I had it. I don't know. But I wound up purchasing the 4K. I purchased it on Amazon. It wasn't very expensive because this is a beautiful movie that needs to be seen in high definition to be appreciated. What blows my mind about this movie, this is a true filmmaker's movie, is that Francis Ford Coppola used no CGI. Literally every film that comes out now in almost every genre in the theater has some form of computer-generated imagery. Something. It's even if it's minor, even if it's just to erase things. This movie uses, I think, just a handful of optical effects, and everything else is camera work, great design, great set pieces. Just looking at this movie is mind-boggling because of just how, like, you're watching it and you're like, okay, how'd they pull that off without using a computer? And they did. They used a lot of camera tricks and editing techniques. They would position cameras specifically in a certain place to give the illusion of something. For example, there's a model train movie, and they put the book right beneath it to have this shadow. Like, it looks almost surreal. Like, the movie looks like the movie, it doesn't look realistic in the sense of, like, you know, if this really happened, it would go like this, but it's very art housey. This is a very art house type of film, and it's realistic in the sense of, like, you know, it's Dracula. It's the Bram Stoker novel Dracula with very few, I guess you can say, changes. There is a big one, but there's very few other ones. But really, it's Coppola's version of the story. Coppola himself grew up with the book, and the story was that apparently he wanted to originally, for Godfather 3, before he cast his own daughter, he had Winona Ryder was supposed to play, like, her daughter, his daughter's role, Sofia Coppola's role. But instead, she took I think she took a script, or maybe it was the book, and gave it to Bram Stoker, gave it to Francis Ford Coppola, who read the Bram Stoker novel when he was a kid, and he always wondered why there were so many things left out of the adaptations. There have been so many Dracula adaptations going all the way back to Nosferatu and other films like that in various different countries, and, you know, tons of different versions. The Hammer films are pretty well known. Bela Lugosi, I am Dracula. This version, though, is sort of Dracula for the 90s. It's a very gothic looking film. It actually has the characters from the book. All the major scenes from the book are here, with the exception of like 2. I believe that the only movie, if I remember correctly, that did a more faithful Dracula adaptation than this one was the BBC special that came out, I don't even know, a while ago. There's a BBC movie called, I think it's called Bram Stoker's Count Dracula. They all have similar names. And that one was a bit closer, but this one was probably the best looking, most artistic, best acted movie of the Dracula series is this one right here. I mean, Coppola really works with some real legends here. You know, I don't know if y'all know this, but Gary Oldman is my favorite actor of all time. I absolutely love Gary Oldman. He's my number one best actor because he can literally play anything. He was Drexel Spivey in True Romance. He was the villain from Leon the Professional. You may know him as being the prisoner of Azkaban from Harry Potter. He was also Commissioner Gordon in the Dark Knight trilogy. I mean, the dude can play anything. He can play anything, and Here in this movie, he plays so many different versions of Dracula because Dracula can transform into a bat, a wolf, old, young. He can even become vapor and mist. So he's got like several different forms, many, many different forms he takes on. He can become rats, which is wacky. Yeah, this version of Dracula, like what really stands out though is the fact that with the lack of CGI, just the costumes they pop out, the art style. Like I mentioned, the gothic sort of sets that they used. Dracula's castle looks big and intimidating in this movie. There's also a lot of naked women in this movie, including Monica Bellucci, and that's always a pleasure because I love Monica Bellucci. She was in this movie and she was in the Matrix sequels as Persephone, so her and Keanu Reeves did a few movies together, those and this one. But they do a lot more together in this movie, but the film stars Gary Oldman as Dracula, and the movie changes the original story only in one major aspect, and that is that it's a love story. Dracula comes home to find his wife, many years ago in the 1400s when he was Vlad the Impaler. Because basically, Coppola wanted to combine the Vlad the Impaler story with the Dracula book, so it's sort of like a combination of both. And some would say that Dracula was based on Vlad the Impaler, right? I mean, that's like a thing people have talked about for years, but with this movie, he wanted to throw in more of those Vlad the Impaler elements. He comes home from war, finds his wife dead, sells his soul to the devil by turning on God, and that's when he becomes a vampire. And many, 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 many years later, in the 1800s, he runs into Keanu Reeves' character, whose fiancée is played by Winona Ryder and is the reincarnation of his lover, Elizabeth. So the story... you have two different stories going on here. You've got Dracula, you've got, Jonathan, Keanu Reeves' character, stuck at the castle for half the movie. Then he gets out. Then you've got the Dracula character trying to seduce, Winona Ryder's character, Mina. And while that's going on, you've got these mysterious, I guess, phenomena happening in London, including Mina's best friend Lucy getting bitten by a vampire, and they all have to tie it together. And Anthony Hopkins is sort of not the main protagonist. I would say that's Keanu Reeves, but Anthony Hopkins is the second protagonist as Abraham Van Helsing, Dr. Van Helsing, who is trying to save the lives of Lucy and Mina and stop Dracula. But this story sort of paints Dracula as being this sympathetic, dark villain. Like, I don't think he's necessarily evil in this movie, although there are some scenes that are definitely evil-ish. It kind of reminds me of Darth Vader a bit, where you see that prequel scene where Anakin killed the younglings, right? In this movie, something similar to that happens, although we don't really know the fate of what happens. If you read the book, you do, involving a baby. No kids were harmed in the making of this film, but in the movie there's some graphic stuff or implied graphic stuff, but that's in the book, so it's not even like it's that crazy. And then of course they have to go stop Dracula, and they explain all that in the film. So just the performances, it's been kind of noted historically that Winona Ryder and Keanu Reeves, this was not their best performance. They were in this movie because they looked good and they were young. And but then to even that out, you've got Gary Oldman and you've got Anthony Hopkins who are carrying this movie. They are acting their asses off. These classically trained, like, legendary actors from Europe. They're sitting there killing it, man. Like, these are two of the best ever. And then you've got like Keanu Reeves not really being sure how to do a British accent. I love Keanu Reeves. This role, which is not for him. There's other roles he's been way better at. This one's he looked good, like I said, and he fit with Winona Ryder. But the acting, it doesn't really work. There was a rumor I remember hearing that Johnny Depp was supposed to play Jonathan. But what's interesting is Johnny Depp. In this movie, when you see Dracula in his young form walking around, when he first talks to Mina, he looks like Johnny Depp, right? Like a little bit like Johnny Depp. But anyways, Gary Oldman is just amazing in this movie, playing the different versions of Dracula. He's also kind of ashamed of the fact that he's cursed, because that's really what's going on, is that he is cursed. And Mina realizes that at some point that she is indeed the reincarnation of Elizabeth, and things get really harrowing from then on. It's a really a tragedy. It's a tragedy. The ending of the movie is sad, but it's also kind of happy if you really understand what's going on. But it's just an incredibly looking movie. Like, there's so many great effects. Like, so many just beautiful costumes. Like, it just looks legitimate. It's not the Dracula that you've seen a gazillion times from Christopher Lee and other actors. This is like, I would say, very close to how the book is. I mean, in the book, Dracula's supposed to have a gray mustache. Here, he doesn't have a gray mustache. He does have a mustache when he's younger. So I guess that was sort of their tribute to it, you know. Anyways, you got to go get your hands on this movie if you haven't. It's a hybrid genre horror romance, also a suspense thriller. It's not really that scary, but I remember when I was a kid, I used to watch this trailer. It used to come on the preview channel, and it used to terrify me, yo. Like, this was go watch the trailer. This is one of the best trailers they've ever put out, yo. Go to YouTube and type in Bram Stoker's Dracula trailer, and go check it out, the original trailer. It's so terrifying. When you actually watch the movie, it's not really that scary. Obviously, I was a kid when I saw a trailer, really little kid when I saw a trailer. But check out the movie. It's not really that scary, but it does have horror elements. Obviously, it's a vampire, but it is the love story, I think, carries it, you know, above. I love this movie, yo. Richard E. Grant is in this movie. Like, it's a great film. Anyways, 30 years of Bram Stoker's Dracula, and hopefully we'll be back in 30 more to talk about it, because it's a timeless classic film. Very, very classic. Easily top 3 Dracula movies, and there's a lot of good Dracula movies. Easily top 3 of all time. No argument there. Francis Ford Coppola is a legend. Anyways, that's what I think. Take care. I'll talk to y'all soon.